Good morning. My name is Dwayne Howard. This morning, I'd like to speak a little bit about the relationship between social change and social media. Has the advancements in social media been any benefit to our needs and desires for social change? What is media? When did media actually begin to be a part of our lives? I think we can think back and remember the days that the printing press first came and made available. Information was able to be mass produced by printing and newspapers and publications and books, and it helped us to be informed. In the 1950s, according to Bill Moyer in a presentation that I found in doing research on this subject, in the 1950s, only 10% of households had a television. A decade later, in the 60s, basically every household had a television, and it actually became, in his words, a part of our life or a member of our family. Also in the 1960s, we saw maybe some of the most meaningful efforts for social change with people like Martin Luther King. His speeches were televised. The March on Selma, Alabama was televised. The resistance to these marches by the government of Alabama were televised. It became real. John F. Kennedy was assassinated in the 1960s. Television covered all the aspects and all of the stories that unfolded as we learned who killed JFK and the ramifications and the emotions that were present during those days. I mean, information came to life with television. As time has moved forward, we have multiple facets of information. Social media has become a part of our lives. Maybe it's too much of a part of our lives in some degree. And again, social media has somewhat become an addiction to some people. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines social media as forms of electronic communication such as websites for social networking and microblogging, through which users create online communities to share information, ideas, personal messages, and other content such as videos. Many times we find that hatred is promoted through social outlets and blogs and websites. We find that many times some of these young people that are doing these mass shootings have had connections to hatred through websites and social media. There seems to be concern, as I did some research, about addiction to social media. And I think we can all see that many times we spend so much of our time on our phones, on our computers, looking for what's the latest news or what's the latest ideas and all the different things that interest us in this world. Well, according to the healthprep.com concerning social media addiction, and this is a quote, how we socially interact is rapidly changing due to the advancements in technology, with over 3 billion people using social media platforms for approximately 2 hours every day. With social media playing such an integral part of our social lives, are we sacrificing more than our time, such as our mental health and well-being, to stay connected? It's making an insinuation here that it's causing some mental issues in our everyday walk. We get so dependent on being informed and what's the latest thing and what's out there. I spoke of a presentation that Bill Moyer has available on the internet. It's a PBS presentation. And he actually focused on the 60s and how things rapidly changed in the 60s. And the very first bit of information he gave in this presentation was about, again, television and how important television had become. We became dependent then on television because at that point in time it was not the only media source. Television was the most important advancement, I think, at that point in time. There was radio, there was newspaper publications, different things that we could read, but television just came so convenient. But it's not nearly as convenient as our iPhones and our computers. And we if we want to know something, you can take your iPhone and search it, and most likely you're going to find the information that you may or may not want to find. Again, I'm trying to make the connection between the advancements in social media and how they are an advantage or a disadvantage to our need and wants for social change. Now, social change is not hard to define. We live in a challenging world where much is changing every day. And you can have an opinion one way or the other about are things changing for the good or changing for the bad. I mean, when we see so much coverage about mass shootings and racial divides and gay rights and pay rights and environmental concerns, those are probably some of the hot topics that we connect with social change. But again, the social media being a part of our information, I think is really good. But also social media can disrupt people. Again, I go back and say, most of the time when we find people that do disturbing things like shooting in churches and shooting in malls, and nowadays it's becoming an everyday occurrence almost. And we find that these people are following social media outlets that are destructive. So again, we have to give our thoughts to how, even though we're so dependent and so necessarily connected to the social media outlets, they are also becoming somewhat of a negative point towards our need for social change. The point we need to look at, the things that we need to look at, is not only do we need to filter and be careful with what we look at on social media, but we need to really pay attention to what our children are looking at. Our children are so much easier influenced than we are, just like we were when we were children. What they see, they believe. If they think it's a person that they have a lot of respect for, and children are not the only one. We all do this. I mean, advertisers pay big money for influential people or popular people in sports and movie and political arenas that they pay to tell us what they want us to hear. And many times we're persuaded, but the children, they are persuaded much easier by maybe different people. So social media is a place of great harm to not only our society and our need for social change, and we have to be careful. We have to be careful, and more importantly, we need to be understanding what our children are looking at. How do we interpret the information that we receive? We should understand where it comes from. Is it a credible source? Is it information we can depend on? Our emotions are what drives our decisions most of the time. And if we are making decisions about social change based on our emotions, many times it can be misleading, and it can be gives us information that we shouldn't think about. We're all influenced. The advertising industry would never spend the amount of money that they spend to try to influence us to buy their products or do what they want us to do if we were not influenced as a whole by social media. You can go to a website nowadays, and before you get through searching what you want to search, you got to go through 100 pop-ups, and it's mostly advertisements of so it's just amazing to me the amount of information that becomes present almost automatically. Again, the social media can be addicting. It's just like I spoke about a while ago. It was amazing that when I did research on this subject, that I found a lot that was said about addictions to social media. So what is my point through all this? Now, I'm maybe personally, I'm not one of these that participate on Facebook. I've never tweeted anything. So I'm maybe a little bit of a pessimist as far as the desires to be on a social media platform. I do have an iPhone. I do make use of it. I look for weather, and I mean, information is beautiful. So social media and the technology that has been made available to us is very, very good. But I think also it has been a tool for destruction for many people's minds. Please help us to understand. Please help understand that I'm not trying to say that social media should be just put aside and we should never use the information that's available to us, but we do not need to allow social media to drive our emotional decisions, which is sometimes just not a valid way to make a decision. I appreciate this opportunity to speak on this subject, and I just ask you to think about the connection between social change and social media. It can be a great advantage or it can be a great disadvantage, and how we use the information will help benefit us as we move forward. And I thank you.